peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Fellow Africans, every time we are challenged on matters of importance, there is always a path for redemption. The only thing that Kenya needs at the moment is redemption. It's a redemption strategy that can create a coexistence of all the people, all the tribes, all regions, and all shades of opinions. Challenges come at an hour where a country is on a test. Test runs are always the most crucial points. That's where experiments collapse. Kenya is not an experiment. Kenya is a nation that has existed for 56 years. The challenges, therefore, should not make us hate each other. These challenges should unite us, should unite the people of Kenya to push forward an agenda, to follow their president, President Uhuru Kenyatta, in delivering the agenda for a better Kenya. A better Kenya will produce a better East Africa. A better East Africa will produce a better Africa. The challenges, the obstacles that come amongst us are many, but we can overcome them through discussion, a wider range of discussion, wider disagreements to agree and disagree, to agree again and disagree to disagree. But we should not form clubs, units, militias, hatred of that nature that can take us to the history. Germany today is Germany because it doesn't want to go to the path of the history. Germany goes to the path of development. Over 70 years ago, Germany was at war with the entire world. Today, it is on the path of resolving some of the problems that come. I want us to stand in the place of Germany and look forward and backwards. See what we can do here, but not yearn for what is in Rome. What is in Rome is safeguarded, but in Sicily, which is Kenya, we need to build a foundation for the younger generation that we are going to live here today. The many who have no employment, the poverty, the ignorance, the diseases that kill the people of Africa. We need to find a modium of operation. Modus operandi. The only modus operandi on this is a united, peaceful Kenya. A Kenya united by values of respect and adherence to the rule of law. A Kenya without schemes of elimination or fiction of elimination or murders written by themselves. A Kenya without any hatred against the president, A Kenya that supports the constitutional roots that the 2010 constitution of yours brought. That is how Africa will rise and shine again. Thank you.
A very good morning to you. A few minutes past 11 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and I'll be taking you through the Good Morning Africa show today. Dr. Matanga will be joining us later through Skype, and he'll be giving his part of the opinion on what the topical discussion today, and is it a reshuffle or an overhaul of cabinet? Remember, this comes from a backdrop of the Treasury for CS for Treasury here in Kenya. Mr. Henry Rotich is in the docks right now. Yesterday, I think he was released on a bond, a very hefty bond, and he's being accused of mismanagement, and a lot of money has been lost through the dam scandal that has engulfed this country since the beginning of the year. It has been a scandal, and the office of the DCI and the DPP have been working on this case. So finally, they were able to get some information and some evidence that, according to them, warrants a trial of the CS, former CS now Henry Rotich, and among the 26 other people, and that includes also his PS, Mr. Kamau Duge. And when you look at all, the Kenyan newspapers this morning, they're all having nearly the same headline, same as yesterday. So let's just look at that quickly before I move on to what is making headlines across Africa this morning. And we look at the Standard newspaper. There, if you can read, and it says the dramatic fall of Rotich in just 24 hours, and it continues to say grace to grass when Treasury CS woke up in his palatial Karen home on Monday. He did not envision himself spending a night in a police cell, sharing a mattress and a blanket with his PS Kamau Duge, and that is what the Standard is saying here. And also just down there, there's a report of Kenyans skip meals to service loans. This shows just how tough times are really for a lot of Kenyans. And it says that uptake of mobile loans are blamed for dire situation that has every 2 or 3 citizens trapped in debt. Yes, there has been a surge of, apps where you can get loans straight from your mobile phone. So it has made, borrowing very easy for a lot of Kenyans, especially the younger generation. And so they have like 4 or 5 of these apps on their phones. They borrow here, the next. And so I don't know if there's a limit to the loan you can borrow in these apps. I'm not very conversant with how even it works. But it appears now, according to a report, Kenyans continue to sink in debt from borrowing from these borrowing apps. This is a trend that is alarming, and also I think it caught the attention of the Ministry of Interior. So when he suspended some betting farms, and I think the government is looking into these borrowing apps. They made a statement last week concerning the same. That is something that should be taken care of. So that is the Standard, and the Daily Nation. The Daily Nation says cabinet reshuffle, Uhuru's headache. So I think this is what is in a lot of people's tongues this morning. And the Daily Nation says President Kenyatta is expected to quickly pick replacements of Treasury either in an acting or substantive capacity by end of the week. How he navigates the terrain of functional politics within Jubilee is a very tough call. And let me just read that. That is in page 4. I think it's important just to get a grip of what the nation is saying this morning, because remember, the docket for Treasury is one that is very sensitive and very important for this country. So it cannot go for a very long time without having a CS there to head it. So this is something that President Kenyatta must move in very quickly and get a person, another CS to head the Treasury. Remember when President Kenyatta was giving his state of the Nation, I think, his State of the Nation address was it in April, and a lot of Kenyans were very disappointed because Kenyans were expecting him to, delve into corruption and talk about corruption and probably, fire a lot of his cabinet ministers, especially at that point when the dam saga was at the climax, and, CS Henry Rotich was adversely mentioned. And so when President Kenyatta was giving his state of address, Kenyans were really expecting him to fire Mr. Henry Rotich, among others, who have not been performing very well in the different dockets they've been given. And President Kenyatta came out and said, no, we cannot use mob justice, and what will happen is we should allow the law to take its course. So once a person has been mentioned and taken to court and the standing trial, then they will be fired, or automatically they will step down. So that is what has happened right now. CS for Treasury Henry Rotich, and now the president has to grapple with the headache of picking another person to succeed him. So let me just read that part on the Daily Nation, and it says, President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to quickly pick Treasury replacements, whether in an acting capacity or substantively, by end of the week, and this is a tough call. There is expectation that a mini cabinet reshuffle is most a suitable path for taking advantage of the vacancies created by the arrest and the reign of Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich and his Principal Secretary Dr. Kamau Thuge. So basically, at the Treasury right now, we do not have leadership, because even the Permanent Secretary for Treasury also is under investigation and is on trial right now. So Treasury is a senior and complex docket which requires expertise in financial matters and possibly experience in government. The candidate selected must be able to take over the financial sector, lead it effectively, and be able to credibly persuade the public and the expenditure will strictly adhere to value of money. Money in a treasury is scared by allegations of high level of corruption. So there it is. This is so you expect probably President Kenyatta to name somebody to stand in place while he proposes a name that will have to go through a cabinet vetting before he can finally be appointed by the president. So Kenyans are waiting, and now, as it appears, there's a looming reshuffle. This is according to the Daily Nation. A lot of things have been happening, and a lot of news we've been hearing from President Kenyatta's cabinet disunity. Another time, one of our viewers here was saying that the cabinet of Kenya right now is divided into 4 parts. I'm not sure, but what we are familiar with is 2 parts, one allied to one side and the other one to the other side. So even when they're having the cabinet meetings, I'm not sure how those meetings go, because there's no unity, and when there's no unity, surely a house that is divided cannot really stand. And so will President Kenyatta kick out some of the CSs that are perceived not to be loyal and are not really advancing, his agendas and his the promises that he has made to Kenyans, because he gives these people the responsibility to make sure that these things are implemented. So when you're having people that are not listening to you, the people that do not speak the same language that you're speaking, the people that don't have the same agenda that you have as the president of the country, then that puts you in a very difficult position. And we've seen President Kenyatta being very frustrated over, the lack of commitment and the lack of service delivery from a lot of these crucial ministries and some ministers, some CSs that are perceived to be allied to the other side of the coalition. It is very apparent that the Jubilee coalition right now is divided right in the middle, and so people have been taking sides, and other politicians allied to the party have been wanting to seem as though they're in the middle, forming all these teams with these names around. They call themselves this and the other. So sometimes Kenyans, we are just left confused. We don't even know what's really happening there. So there you go. President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to name a new replacement for, the Treasury Minister there, CS, Mr. Henry Rotich, who right now, is being tried over the loss of, especially the money. A lot of money was lost in tunes of billions from the dam scandal, among others. And while he was giving this statement, I think on Monday, Mr. Taib Ali Taib for the prosecution explaining why Mr. Henry Rotich and his co-accused should face the full wrath of the law, he said they have been in their offices working for their own benefits and not serving the public. They abused their powers. There you go. So there have been names that are being flaunted here that they think maybe will be a good replacement for CS Rotich, and one of them is the head of public service, Joseph Kinyua, has had a stint at Treasury and Central Bank, and also, okay, this is according to the Daily Nation, so I'm just reading what they have here, some names they think will be a better replacement for Henry Rotich, and another one, the EAC Minister Aden Mohammed, and he's one of only two CSAs who have a banking background, so that may not be a very bad pick. And also Principal Secretary for Transport Esther Koimet has worked at the Treasury as well. And United Nations UNCAD Secretary General Mukisa Kitui is being fronted as a possible replacement. I don't know if he has a financial background. I'm not sure. But right now he works for the United Nations there. And Ruth Kagia is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Strategy in the Presidency, as well as Transport Minister James Macharia. The transport minister, the ministry, Kenyans, some decisions that he's been making in this ministry have left Kenyans wondering if he's even the right person, if he's even suitable for this job as the CS for transport. Remember when he decided that all of a sudden the public transport was not going to access the Nairobi CBD, and then I think there will be a drop-off somewhere, and then Kenyans had to walk, Nairobians had to walk all the way to the CBD, and then later on he decided, okay, we're going to have like a car-free day here in Nairobi. Just decisions that were not founded, that had not proper research, and structures were not even put in place to ensure that this even happens. And so with these pronouncements, Kenyans wondered, do we even have the right person at the Ministry of Transport? And we can see the problems, in regards to when you hear the SGR and some information that was coming there in terms of corruption and stuff. And a lot of things have been happening anyway under the docket of transport. So the CS, James Macharia, I don't know if he was to be chosen today, what Kenyans will feel about that, owing to some previous, blunders that he has made that has happened in the transport ministry under his watch. So there you go. So President Kenyatta has a headache there to deal with. And on the international front there, I see Mr. Boris replaces Theresa May as a British Prime Minister, and Boris Johnson, who won the race to become Britain's next Prime Minister yesterday, heading straight into confrontation over Brexit with Brussels and Parliament, as well as a tense diplomatic standoff with Iran. The former London mayor easily beat his rival, Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. Right now, Britain is in a diplomatic tiff with Iran. I think Iran is holding hostage one of Britain's ship fuel with fuel in it. So Britain is looking at it as a diplomatic aggression, and they're calling it criminal. And Iran also, saying this was going on his waters illegally. So there you go. So those are some of the things that Boris will have to contend with outside of the matters, Brexit. And remember, the deadline is on the 31st of October. And yesterday was watching him making his maiden speech. He said, you know what? He will deliver Brexit. So let's see how that will work out for Britain there, with Boris Johnson now set to be the Prime Minister there. Theresa May, I think, is stepping down today, if I'm not wrong. And on the Star newspaper, who will be next? Our Finance Minister. Yes, it is what is making headlines in all fronts on Kenyan major news outlets, the newspapers, and even the major media outlets, televisions, and so forth. And now President Kenyatta is reportedly considering Esther Koimet as CS and Albert Mwenda as Permanent Secretary. Esther Koimet, of course, we had read earlier from the Daily Nation. She's a Principal Secretary for Transport and has also worked at the Treasury, so maybe she understands the workings of the Kenyan Treasury. She understands that place very well, so maybe she could be an appropriate pick for that. And also, we have to consider, I think, the ethnicity, being that Mr. Henry Rotich comes from another this ethnical background. Maybe they would want to replace that to I know. It's ridiculous, but yes. So let's see how President Kenyatta will make the picking for our next CS for Treasury. I will come back later for more Kenyan news. I was just looking at the headlines, and another interesting headline on the Star newspaper. They're saying, read there, why Kenyans are struggling to tame their waistlines. This is a very interesting story, and if we'll have time towards the end of the show, then maybe I will just go to the details of that. So thank you so much for joining this morning. I see you. Let me just appreciate a few of you who have already you've already written to us. John Paul, good morning. Aku Abata, good morning. William Aja, John Petronias Lokin, you're saying hi. Miriam, good morning. You're watching from Queensland in Australia. It is a good evening to you, I believe, John. Thank you so much for joining. And Night Michael Losowa, you're saying good morning, Doctor. And Miriam, Doctor will be joining me through Skype, so keep tuning in. Any moment now, he'll be with us here. He's not in studio, but he'll be joining us through Skype. The topic today, I believe, is something that I would really love to hear his opinion in, the reshuffle or an overhaul of cabinet. And I'd like to see and, hear what he'll have to say about the recent events that have been happening in the country and indeed across Africa. And our friend here, the one, your name is in Arabic, I can't read it. Maybe you can remind me your name. You said it the other time, I can't remember. But you're saying you're watching from Sudan. Please, what is the latest from Sudan? Because the last time I think I read something from Sudan is the protest side, the civilians, they decided that they needed some time to have talks within themselves and then agree on something before they go back and negotiate and continue with the talks with the military council. Is that right? So they're still continuing, consulting within themselves, the protest side, the civilian side, right? And so once they settle on whatever it is, the matters they needed to iron by themselves, and they make an agreement, that they can go back to the transitional military council. So let me know the latest from Sudan this morning. Philemon Drop, you're saying you're watching. Going Solo, you're watching. From is it Ireland or what? I don't know. Peter Chimeoba, you're saying good afternoon. Where are you watching us from? It's morning here. You're saying you're watching from India. Okay, good afternoon to you. Noah Biafra, Bonventure, good morning. Dennis Salig, you're saying good morning. Punchline TV, you're watching all the way from Southern Cameroon. Are you saying please advocate for Southern? Yes, and I have some very sad news. Yesterday, one of our viewers brought to our attention about the deaths that happened in Yaoundé court there in Cameroon. So I have the news here with me, and so we will be looking at that. Okay, so we will continue. So I will just let you know what's happening, and if there's anything else you think I've left out, please let me know. Israel Williams, thank you. Please keep writing, and while you do, I'd love to know where you're watching us from. Okay, Dennis Hale, God is using this television station. Oh, all right, thank you. Western Night Michael, you're saying great to hear from you. No, thanks for the update. I'm watching you from Perth in Western Australia. Keep writing. So let me just go through quickly. Ogbe, you're watching all the way from Germany. Yes, Guten Morgen to you. It is still morning here, just a few minutes. Just a few minutes to midday here. So it is still good morning. And Samuel, you're watching from the United States. So can we just go quickly to what is making headlines across Africa? And then we will continue. And let me know where you're watching us from, please. It's always a pleasure. So we start with Nigeria. And Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari on Tuesday officially transmitted a list of ministerial nominees to the Senate for vetting and further confirmation. The Senate President Ahmad Lawan confirmed receipt of the list and announced that lawmakers had postponed their annual recess for a week to enable them screen the nominees. Out of the over 40 names submitted, 7 were women. Among among them the immediate past Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed and sister of the immediate past Senate President Gami Saraki from Kwara. And still in Nigeria, the United States has imposed visa restrictions on those Nigerians it says are responsible for undermining the Nigerian democratic process. In a statement, the State Department says the measures will also apply to those who have organized election-related violence. The names of those impacted by this announcement has not been made public by the United States government, stressing that the sanctions were specific to certain individuals and not directed at the Nigerian people or the newly elected government. We go to Cameroon, where the Cameroonian government has blamed supporters of a detained opposition leader Maurice Kamto for a riot at a prison in the capital, Yaoundé. The trouble on Sunday night at the Kondengoi maximum security prison saw hundreds of inmates go on rampage, burning the prison library and infirmary, as well as the destruction of a workshop meant for female inmates. The riot was live streamed on Facebook and showed prisoners calling for the release of Anglophone leaders held for over a year now. They chanted pro-independence slogans and described President Paul Biya's government as incompetent. Well, a government official, Jean-Claude Tila, who visited the prison to assess the damage, said the supporters of Mr. Kamuto's Cameroon Resistance Movement, CRM, were the instigators of the violence. 4 inmates were reported dead. And in the DRC, officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo say 9 people, including several children, were killed when rebels attacked 2 villages in the east of the country. Late on Monday, Allied Democratic Forces rebels used machetes to kill people in Oicha and Eringeti, 2 villages north of the city of Beni. Local residents say the group had warned of imminent attacks, but the motive is still unclear. We move to Tanzania, where the Tanzanian prosecutor in the case of the kidnapping billionaire Mohamed Dewji wants 5 foreigners from South Africa and Mozambique to be arrested in connection with the alleged crime, the Citizen newspaper in Tanzania has reported. Mr. Dewji, 43 years old, was seized by armed men in the city of Dar es Salaam last October. So far, the only person to be charged over the kidnapping is a Tanzanian taxi driver who is accused of being involved in a criminal gang with links to Johannesburg. The Citizen newspapers continued to report. And in Gambia, a Gambian soldier has admitted to participating in the 2005 execution of around 50 migrants on the orders of former President Yahya Jammeh, who is reported to have feared the men had come to overthrow him. Lieutenant Malik Jatta was giving testimony before the country's Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission, which is investigating atrocities committed during Mr. Jammeh's 22-year rule. He earlier admitted involvement in the murder of journalist Deida Haidara in 2004 on the orders of the former president. And Kenya's Finance Minister Henry Rotich has been released on $150,000 bail after pleading not guilty to more than 10 counts of corruption-related charges. He is accused of flouting procurement procedures in awarding a contract worth more than $450 million for the construction of 2 dams to an Italian firm, CMC de Ravenna. The company has denied any wrongdoing. Mr. Rotich was ordered to surrender his passport, as well as part of the bail condition was to bar him from entering the premises of Treasury Ministry. We move to Ghana, where Ghanaian shop owners have forcefully locked Nigerian-owned shops in the market in the capital, Accra, after insisting that they are operating illegally. One trader told CTFM it is the 3rd time this year that shops belonging to Nigerians have been locked by Ghanaian traders. Last month, more than 30 Nigerian-owned shops were locked by unidentified individuals in Ghana's second-largest city, Kumasi. And recently, local traders in Accra said on a radio show that the locks are warning to the government to enforce the law that bars foreigners from participating in the retail market. Now, the president of the Nigerian Traders Union in Ghana, Chukwemeka Naji, told the BBC that the ECOWAS protocol gives all citizens of member states equal rights to do business, reside and establish a business in each other's member state. We go to Gabon, where Gabonese former Member of Parliament Bertrand Azidi Abege has been sentenced to 6 years in jail for his part in post-election violence. One of his lawyers told the AFP news agency a Libreville criminal court convicted Zibi on the charges of violence and assault and illegal possession of a firearm. A lawyer, Charles Henry, told AFP News. His lawyer told AFP that they intend to appeal the decision. And in Mozambique, a Catholic bishop has criticized the government over what he said was its failure to curb a radical Islamist insurgency, reports the AFP news agency. The criticism was made in pastoral letter from the Bishop of Bemba, Don Luis Fernandez, that was read out to worshippers over the weekend. Bemba is the gas-rich area in the north of Mozambique where Islamist militant attacks have been growing in the last 2 years. And we go to Rwanda, where opposition activist Diana Rwigara has told the BBC Newsday program about why she wrote an open letter to President about the death of a prison guard. Mr. Rwigara published the letter to President Paul Kagame last week about the murder of Mr. Paul Mwiseneza. In the letter, she said he was killed shortly after talking to her about unrest at a prison in the capital city, Kigali. And we go to Zimbabwe, where the government has announced plans to start offering free treatment to cancer patients, reports a state-run ZBC radio. Health Minister Obadiah Moyo quoted as saying to the radio station that cancer has overtaken HIV and AIDS as the main cause of death in the country. Last year, some NGOs warned that Zimbabwe's health sector was in a precarious state. A former President Robert Mugabe was known to going to Singapore to get his own medical treatment, and as we speak right now, one of the country's vice presidents, Constantino Chiwenga, is following a similar trend of not getting treatment for his undisclosed illness inside Zimbabwe, and instead he's gone to China. And in Botswana, the country now says it is endorsing Kenya's bid for a seat at the United Nations Security Council when a position becomes vacant later this year. Visiting Botswana President Mokgweetsi Masisi said his country would back Kenya out of trust that Kenya would support it too in other international bids. So that is just what is making headlines here in Africa in just a nutshell. And in case there's some information you feel I've left out, yesterday you were very useful in giving me information coming from Cameroon that I did not have with me here. So please, I really appreciate, that cooperation. So if there's anything you feel that I've left out or something that is happening where you are across Africa or even indeed across the world, and you feel that it will be important and helpful information for our viewers, please let me know in our comment section, and I will, read it to our viewers. Ogebe, you're saying you're watching us from Germany. Good morning, Samuel. I said you're watching us from the US. Asu Onyoni and Going Solo, you're saying the southern Cameroon wars are shifted from the bushes and villages to the prisons. And Simon Kamau, you're saying good morning, enjoying the show from Denmark. Oh, good morning to you, Simon. Thank you so much for joining. Obiaro Obuchi Danzaki, you're saying you're watching from Biafra land. And William Aja, you're saying those said nominees are the same criminals. All right. Now, this is the type of information I like. So keep writing. Let me just read this. And you're saying Buhari promised to lead by example, but reversed is the case. All those ministers he supposedly selected, they all have corruption charges against them. But once you join APC, Buhari's party charges against you automatically drop. A former Bayelsa state has 198 billion naira against him. Godwin Akpabio has huge corruption charges against him, and many more of them. Buhari is leading with thieves. They are all criminals. Okay there, William Aja, thank you for that. Evans Juma, you're saying good morning, enjoying the show from Mombasa Road. Alrighty now, thank you so much here in Nairobi. Thank you for joining. Sylvia Kalingo, you're saying okay, fluent English there. Thank you for watching. All right, thank you too for your support. We appreciate you watching us. Celestine Ogbonaya Okoria saying, where is Dr. Sister? I love your program. I'm watching from Brazil. Doctor, he should be joining us any minute. They're just working. We've been having a bit of a technical issue connecting to with him through our Skype. It's a bit of a problem, but once Once we are able to get hold of him, I'll let you know immediately, and we can, bring him in. He misses you too, and he sends his greetings this morning. And on his behalf, he's asking me to thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your support to Punchline Africa Television. We're here to speak on behalf of Africa, and of course, when you go out there, I don't know if a lot of our viewers, you watch us from across the world, and sometimes the African narrative is not told well enough. And the African narrative sometimes does not represent who we are. And sometimes you wonder when you hear conversations from, very ignorant people out there, you wonder, are you speaking about the same Africa that I belong? Are you speaking about the same continent that I know? Because fine, we have our problems, but there's also that beautiful part about Africa that people need to hear more often. And so Punchline Africa is here to make sure that African voice and things that really matter to Africans are addressed, and we talk about them here, and we discuss them, and our viewers, you always make these shows a success, so we appreciate you this morning. So we are started, and I just went through some news-making headlines across Africa this morning, and we started with Nigeria, of course, and one of our viewers already has given his opinion on what he thinks of this list that President Muhammadu Buhari gave on Tuesday for his ministerial nominees to the Senate, and he'll be giving it to the Senate for vetting and further confirmation. And out of the 40 names submitted, 7 were women. I don't know, and I don't want to sound like a feminist, but 40 lists and 7, are there no women who are qualified there in Nigeria who can actually take these positions and do a good job? We've seen countries, President Ramaphosa, after his win and inauguration, he made his cabinet pick, and half of that he made sure was women. The world is progressive like that. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a woman. I'm just saying, come on now, people. Rwanda, we've seen President Paul Kagame is the one leading here in Africa in terms of, making sure that gender equality is there. And Ethiopia also, we see the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed trying to do that, inclusivity. So out of 40 names for the cabinet, 7 are women. Seriously. He could have even put 15 then, unless you're telling me they're not qualified women in Nigeria, and I will beg to differ. I think there are a lot of women in Nigeria that can do equally a good job should they be given the opportunity. And, we've seen that, when you have a country like Rwanda, they were able to stabilize, especially after they came from genocide, when they because it's the women who even started the peace talks in the villages, and it's them who suffer even a lot when when you see all those images and the clashes and the killings from Boko Haram raid places, you see it's the women and children who suffer the most, who have to carry things on their head and try to look for safety and scamper. I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Men, please understand where I'm coming from. I love you very much, but come on, out of 40 list of people, of cabinet nominees, President Buhari only put 7 women there. That is an offense. I feel very offended as a woman. You should have made even 15 then, and then the rest to men. I think that shows just how much a lot of our, even political settings, it's becoming very difficult even for women to get some of these positions. And that's why Kenya here, we have a constitution that mandates us now to make sure that we have elected women representatives in every county, in all 47 counties in the country, because it's increasingly becoming very difficult, I think, for women to find their way into these leadership positions, or even in politics. The playing field is still not leveled up, so I think this is just a downer for me. I think President Buhari would have done better. Okay, you're saying, can you say something about South Sudan banning the national anthem, not allowing people? Yes, and matter of fact, I talked about it yesterday. Hold on. And unfortunately, I did not have my phone with me here, but our production, because I was wondering, from our national anthem, It is a prayer to the country. So even the president is not mentioned there unless you're saying that you're making the loyalty pledge. That's when you pledge your loyalty to the president and the nation of Kenya, blah, blah, blah. But the national anthem is basically a prayer for us Kenyans. So I was just wondering, what will make President Salva Kiir ban the national anthem? He said that the national anthem should not be played in any public functions, especially when junior members are being sent, are officiating some matters there. It has nothing to do with even a government official. We sing the national anthem in schools. We sing the national anthem during sports matches before they start. We sing national anthems before any public gathering here in Kenya. It is a requirement and always reminds us, how grateful we are to be in this country. So in that, I was just wondering, why would President Salva Kiir ban South Sudan's national anthem not to be played where he's not to be sung where he's not present? And remember, as a sign of defiance, a lot of South Sudanese, if you go to Twitter, took to Twitter, and they were singing the national anthem and posting it, or to his face. So this is just a line. I'll read just the first stanza of South Sudanese national anthem, which I believe is very similar to what we have here. Maybe the wordings are different, but it's just the same. Let me just read it. It starts with, "O God, we praise and glorify you for your grace on South Sudan, the land of great abundance. Uphold us united in peace and harmony." That is a prayer. That is a prayer to the nation of South Sudan. That is a prayer for the country. So why President Salva Kiir said this should not be sung in his absence, that I don't understand the logic in that. But, South Sudanese went ahead and they did their renditions, the versions in whatever form, and they posted it all over social media, so you can go there. So I don't know what President Salva Kiir has to say for that. Nyabil Amomokiachu saying good morning, Miriam and Dr. Matsanga. You're watching us from Australia, South Gippsland, Wontargi. Did I say that right? Thank you so much. It is a good evening to you, and hopefully you had a good day there. Burkenge Kipkimboy, you're saying, where is Matsanga Leaks? Doctor, the good doctor is working on it. You keep waiting. It will be coming anytime from now. But thank you so much, Kip Kemboye, for watching this morning. And Yibila Moon, you're saying the failed leadership in Africa has made us poorest in planet due to corruption. Yes, that is indeed so. There we are. So this matter that is proving to be a problem still, the Cameroon government is now blaming supporters of detained opposition leader Maurice Kamto for a riot that occurred over there on Sunday in the capital in Yaoundé, the capital of Cameroon, in the Yaoundé. And he's been held there, and a lot of opposition figures, as well as so many Anglophone leaders, are being held. And they've been held for over a year without trial, which goes against any form of human rights. It's just violation upon violation there in Cameroon. So I think the agitation and the anxiety, and they're saying also they're being treated so badly in those prisons. So this might have advised the need for the riot, because it's like they tried to express themselves, but the prison officials would not listen to anything. So they decided, okay, now we'll just go on a rampage. But what is interesting is that this riot was actually live on Facebook. When you go online, you'll find it. And the riot was live streamed on Facebook and showed prisoners calling for the release of Anglophone leaders held for over a year now. And they've been held for a year without trial. Same as, opposition figure Maurice Kamto, the opposition leader there for the Cameroonian Renaissance movement there. And so they were chanting pro-independence slogans and described President Paul Biya's government as incompetent. I think that, I think Paul Biya, is really out of touch with reality. His government is completely out of touch with reality. Remember, sometimes back, he had sent one of his, Prime Minister to the Anglophone part, and he was just, representing the government in trying to find the solutions to some of the problems. And I think he wanted to sort of reach out to the Anglophone region and see what is it that is happening and how can they start a peace process. But here's where he missed the point. He said they can talk about anything else, but not the matter of separation. So I don't understand because the Anglophone has been agitating for a separation for a very long time now, and this is advised by the systematic exclusion for things that are important, when it comes to even roads, schools. They have been, when you go to the Anglophone part of Cameroon, as well as Biafra part also of Nigeria, it's one of the richest parts in Nigeria, endowed with natural resources, very, bright minds coming there, from Biafra land as well as the Anglophone part of Cameroon. And the systematic, exclusion by the government is what is advising the agitation and the need for these people feeling if you're not treating us right, we don't feel included in the matters of state. We have been neglected. Say from Biafra, are meant to understand that in all of Nigeria, parts of Biafra land has the worst infrastructure, has nothing is happening there that would even appease the Biafrans to even want to stay with the larger Nigerian government, because they're being neglected. They're not considered in anything there when it comes to even allocation of funds and all that. So the same case for Anglophone region in Cameroon. The schools are now closed. The hospital was banned that served a huge population there from the Anglophone region. The hospital was banned with patients inside. You tell me, how does that even make sense? How does this government still expect these people that feel their rights have been infringed, their God-given rights, human rights? It's not something that you negotiate with. It's your right to get proper health care. It is your right to get education. It is your right to get protection. It's your right to live in security. The state is supposed to guarantee that and provide with the basic necessities that you require for you as a citizen of a state. That is non-negotiable. So when you live in a country where all of this, even basic amenities, are denied to you, this is the result of what we see today. And as I said yesterday, that is what advised even South Sudan to want to detach itself from Sudan, and now it is a state. And very soon, Biafrans, they continue with their agitation, and they've made it very clear they're not interested in anything that has to do with Buhari and with anything that has to do with the larger Nigerian government, because they don't feel as if they are part. And this is because they have been neglected. They've not been being treated right. Their rights have been violated. If you're walking around and you appear to even be wearing something that suggests that you're part of Biafra, you were killed, you were harassed, you're maimed. So a lot of things have been happening that are terrible from these areas. Yebil Amum Okiecho saying a homegrown dictator in South Sudan should be concerned to the region. I think so. Hold on. Let me read one of your Patrick and Chandi, you're saying you're watching from Istanbul. Thank you so much. You tell me what you feel about what's happening in Africa this morning. Pascaston, you're saying please ask the Danabo zoology entity called Nigeria why the dead Buhari, who the Sudanese man now represents, why he refused to pass the 2014 national conference, which Goodluck Jonathan arranged for all the almost 400 tribes that would have solved the problem and shunned corruption. I think President Buhari, from what I read and what I hear coming from Nigeria, a lot of his lieutenants, a lot of his foot soldiers and people allied to him are really benefiting from corruption right now. That's why corruption is at an all-time high right now in Nigeria. And Nigeria is a very rich country, but the president is very quiet in some of these things. And as I said yesterday, and even we talked about it on our Sunday show, the letter that former President Olusegun Obasanjo wrote to him also mentioned the extensive levels and the high levels of corruption right now that is really eating into the public coffers in Nigeria is at a very alarming rate. But President Buhari is very reluctant to fight corruption and to fight the level of insecurity that is being caused by Boko Haram, and also other entities there that are really posing a great insecurity in Nigeria. So I don't know why he wouldn't. But I think because people around him, and even perhaps people have said even himself, he's benefiting from this allegedly this corruption that is on a runaway there. And something that I read from the World Bank that I've still not gotten over is that Nigeria, with all the resources it has, one of the biggest economies in Africa, one of the most cosmopolitan country in Africa, with a huge manpower and population and a big economy, has in the world the highest levels of poverty, in the world. Forget Somalia, forget what on South Sudan, who are still trying to find their footing, because of the war and all that. Things are not working quite well in South Sudan. Forget all of that. Nigeria has the leading number, actually is the top, the world poorest population in the world. That, I think 3 months later, I'm still shocked every time I say that to myself. I have to remind myself, what is really happening and what is really wrong with us as Africans, and why would even that statistic be that Nigeria is the poorest in the world? That goes to show how, even the wealth that Nigeria has as a whole is really mismanaged and misdirected. And of course, it's one of the corrupt, countries in the world, according to World Index. And now, just there, I was reading, even the US has issued another travel ban, I think, to some officials there over corruption and other matters during the past election that happened there in February. Patrick Nchandi, you're saying the Cameroon government is not tackling the Ambazonia crisis from the root cause, but are providing cosmetic solutions. That is a failed state. I don't know, over here times and times again I've thought perhaps, do you think that maybe a dialogue will be a best solution if, Yaoundé, part of Yaoundé, Paul Biya's government was open to an open dialogue together with the protest side, the Anglophone, side? Will that solve anything? Will that perhaps be a good start towards finding a lasting peace? And of course, Anglophones, you've made it very clear that you do not want anything else. You just want to secede. You want to have your own country. You want to self-determine. You want to have your own way of life outside of especially the rest of Cameroon. The same as Biafra. You've made it very clear. You don't want to be part of anything to do with Nigeria. You call it the zoo government. All right. So Chiboy or Jim Coy, thank you so much, and God bless you as well, and really thank you so much for watching. Festus Anunike, you're saying Biafra Nation is coming to make Africa and black man proud. All right. William Aja, thank you. You're saying Nigerian government in heading to rock. How will the normal human being waited after 53 days after his so rigged election to pick to pick his nominee? Nigerians asked him. He said he wanted to take his time to choose qualified candidates, but 89% so-called nominee are from his previous term. Why are criminals? But one thing I know is this: the world is watching. United States is taking a huge step to deny them visa. I believe the rest of the world will take the same step. By the time the world stops giving them visa, maybe they will start to think like human beings. All right. William Aja, I understand your frustration. Thank you for watching us this morning. First, as you're watching me from Hamburg in Germany, I appreciate. And Benson Ameda, you're watching me from Kenya this afternoon, 6 minutes past midday. They're here. Is it? Oh, no, let me just check the time to make sure. Oh, yeah. 6 minutes past midday there. So thank you so much for tuning in. Romitex Iyogwe, you're saying you're watching me from Mozambique. And there are also some alarming news there from Mozambique. I think I was just going through news making headlines here in Africa this morning. We looked a bit at Kenya, but I want us to just continue looking at what is happening in Africa. And then we can go back to Kenya on the tail end of this show. And we looked at, the Cameroon government is now blaming supporters of detained opposition leader Maurice Kamto for the riot that happened in the inner prison in Yaoundé. And together he's also blaming Anglophone leaders because they were protesting over mistreatment in the prison. The conditions there are terrible. And especially the Anglophones, they have been held there for over a year now without trial. That goes against any form of justice there. So they were protesting over that. And what is interesting is that the riot was live streamed on Facebook and showed the prisoners calling for the release of Anglophone leaders and also other people who have been detained illegally. And so DRC is also a melting pot. It has refused to go away. And I think in a week we can read 2 news items about deaths that are happening. And now officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo say 9 people, including several children, were killed when rebels attacked 2 villages in the east of the country. That is, I think African Union is really asleep. When you read such things here, I don't know what Mr. Al-Sisi is doing, being the chairperson of AU right now, or maybe he has his own problems to deal with. I think while the African Cup of Nations was continuing, he must have, I think, closed down some shops that were owned by suspected, Muslim Brotherhood members, or who he's saying are plotting to a coup over him. So he's worried. He's very paranoid right now. So I don't know. He's having his own problems in Egypt. So he's not able. His leadership is not able to focus on his responsibility as the chairperson of the AU. The deaths that we have been reporting here from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the ethnic cleansing that has been happening, you see it making headlines even across all major international media outlets. AU has remained mum. AU has said nothing. The leadership is asleep. And we keep asking here on this show every other day, who is AU serving? What interests are they serving? Is this not some of the things they should be looking at? Now what is happening in the Anglophone, the riot in the that happened and the 4 people were killed over there over the weekend in Cameroon. Is this not something that AU should be sending, should be even talking about, consulting with the leadership of Cameroon and trying to see what is really happening? What is AU doing? There is a mandate in AU that allows them to actually intervene in member states when they feel that human rights violations are taking place. And that is what precisely is happening in Anglophone and in Biafra land and in South Sudan right now. Some killings were reported in Darfur area. I think one of our viewers, asked me about the latest from Darfur. What is happening? What is happening in Sudan? Protesters were killed. AU came so lately when everybody else had made a statement, when the EU had made a statement, when the United Nations had made a statement, when everybody else had made a statement. And that's when AU decided, you know what, now let's just suspend Sudan. And in that, they left a vacuum. They should have been the ones negotiating, mediating between the negotiations between the protesters and the military council. But they seem to be having very vested interest, or I just don't even know where the attention is right now. So it's very sad. And Libya, it's just another nobody's even talking about what is happening in Libya right now, which is also very, very sad. But of course, Egypt is involved in the war that is happening today in Libya. So the AU chairperson, having, being that he's the president of Egypt, I think his position there and is very compromised. His role there is very compromised because he's already biased. Yes, indeed. And Bismarck Bure, you're saying you're right? Who is right? Omondi Oluo, Francis Oluoch Omondi, you're saying, watching from Kenya, our government in Africa has been agents for European and Americans billionaire. That would include George Soros, right? Thank you so much. And you're saying we are our own disgrace. You know what? I agree with you as much as Bismarck also is agreeing with you. I agree with you totally. Odobe Collins Chekobe, you're saying can't do without you people. Punchline Africa. we are here for you, and we appreciate your support. And thank you so much for joining me by myself. We're still waiting to see if we can connect with Dr. Matanga. He's not in studio today, but we're hoping that we could get him through Skype. You're still working on it. If you're able to, we're still experiencing some bit of technical hitches. Once we're able to, I will let you know before the end of the show. And if not, well, let's just continue having a good time and having the information that you're having. And also thank you so much for your contribution, and you're letting me know of so many things that are happening out there, and I really appreciate it. Okay, but you're saying very sad news, what happened in Nigeria. Our leaders were mismanagement. They're mismanaging the resources, and too much corruption without accountability, I think. And I think President Buhari has just decided to look the other way while the country is being looted and the runaway insecurities. And that's why people are saying maybe he's benefiting from what is happening, from the mayhem by Boko Haram and all these things. It's ridiculous. Chooks gift Sunday, you're saying, my sister, the man you called is not his aide, Dame Jibril from Sudan. All right. Thank you so much. And so we move to, of course, Gambia. And yesterday I told you there's a reconciliation, reparation commission that is happening there that is seeking to investigate atrocities committed under former President Yahya Jammeh's 22-year-old. And so another Gambian soldier, the same one that killed the famed journalist that in 2005 that attracted condemnation across the world. He killed the journalist in 2004. So this soldier also said he was given orders by the president to execute 50 migrants. You're just trying to find your way to the Mediterranean, but the Gambian president decides, no, since you're here, we're going to murder you. So he gave orders for the soldier to murder 50 migrants, who says reported to have feared that the men had come to overthrow him. These are migrants who are on their way to find their way to whatever country that they were going, but the President Yahya Jammeh gave orders for them to be killed. It's very sad. Human life is sacred. So he had feared that these men had come to overthrow him. They're not even Gambians. They're migrants from other African countries, and were finding their way through Gambia to whatever destination they were headed to. But the president, former President Yahya Jammeh, ordered for their killing. That's really, really sad. And of course, in Kenya, our finance minister, as I had said earlier at the start of the show, Kenya's finance minister Henry Rotich was released yesterday on $150,000 bond and bail after pleading not guilty to more than 10 counts of corruption-related charges. This is something that I also saw yesterday making headlines on CNN and Al Jazeera and other international news outlets. And this is something that the rest of the world is looking very keenly, and we'll see how the court is going to handle this matter. And him and other 26 other people that are being mentioned widely in the loss of the monies, involving the Italian firm CMC de Ravenna. The company has come out to deny any wrongdoing, and Mr. Rotich was ordered to also surrender his passport, and he was also completely barred not to even step his foot or enter the premises of the Kenya's Treasury Ministry. So this is something that we'll be following very, very keenly. And I was really interested to get Dr. Matanga's opinion on this, and I think he was going to talk about it. So let the team continue to work on getting him in touch with us if they're able to, and then if not, then I'm sure he'll talk about it very soon. And so in Ghana, there's something around that has been going on between Ghanaian business people and Nigerians business people. Ghana and Nigeria, more or less, I think, even your culture, I'm not sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I see you share a lot of things. The Ghanaians and Nigerians, you share a lot of things in common, and we see that from your movies. When you watch, sometimes you can't even tell which one is Nigerian, which one is Ghanaian, unless you know the major actors, and okay, that one is Nigerian, but this one is Ghanaian. Otherwise, we see a lot of culture. You share a lot of culture, and your way of life is quite intertwined. And so Ghanaian shop owners, have now forcefully locked Nigerian-owned shops in the market in the capital Accra, and this is something that has been happening for the last 3 or so months. And Initially, the Ghanaian shop owners were saying, Nigerian traders are coming here with substandard goods. But the Nigerian Business Association, they're saying, no, we're just selling the same things that you guys are selling in the shops, and perhaps you're just bringing in different things, but we are following the laws in Ghana. We're not breaking any law. And so why are these shops being closed in Ghana that are operated by, Nigerians? So one trader, this is the third time this year that shops belonging to Nigerians have been locked by Ghanaian traders. So last month, more than 30 Nigerian-owned shops were locked by unidentified individuals in Ghana's second largest city in Kumasi. And recently, local traders in Accra said on a radio show that the locks are a warning to the government to enforce the law and bars foreigners from participating in the retail market. Now, this is my problem with all this. Remember ECOWAS? Is it 15 member state in ECOWAS? They want to have, I think, a common currency named as ECO by 2020, right? And they want to be one strong economic bloc. And when you read such information, you wonder why it's very difficult for us to integrate as Africans, or for us to even care what is happening in another country, because we have this selfishness in us. What is happening here? These traders in Nigeria are not even they're selling their wares in Ghana, are not even breaking the law. I believe they're following be it a county or municipal or whatever law it is, for them to open shop there. You just can't go to some place, and especially as a foreigner, and start shop there and not even. So they are operating there legally. So now the president of the Nigerian Traders Union in Ghana, his name is Chukwe Emeka Naji, he said that the ECOWAS protocol gives all citizens of member states equal rights to do business, reside, and establish a business in each member state. And that, in all fairness, that is true. So why does the Ghanaian, traders, they're in Accra, find a need to they're closing shop? This is the third time they've been doing that this year only. They're closing shops owned by Nigerians there in Accra, in Ghana. I think now this might require government's intervention and to protect these traders that have come to Ghana to sell their wares and operate businesses illegally. And they're all members of the ECOWAS trading bloc and should not be blood. So they're just following protocol. The protocol in ECOWAS gives all citizens of member states equal rights to operate and do business in any other, member state. So how will this play out, especially if now ECOWAS is planning to adopt a single currency, known as ECO by 2020? These are some of the hurdles and some of the challenges that they must iron out before even realizing, this, because otherwise they'll have problems the same way we're having problems here in the East African community. One day you hear Tanzania has blocked Kenyan chicken from going. Tanzania has refused to take Uganda's sugar, or Kenya has done this or that. So it has become, the unity in the African community has become a mirage. It's become very difficult for us to work as a bloc. And at the end of the day, we are really missing out on opportunities outside there, especially. There's one that particularly East African community region has missed out a partnership with the European Union. They had agreed on a trading agreement, but the EU has said unless Tanzania comes back to that, because we can't go ahead with these other members if Tanzania has not agreed to come back and agree to ratify, to sign into this treaty, because we don't want to cause any tension between the East African communities by leaving one member out. And then Uganda said, you know what, Uganda is willing to sign and to ratify that agreement, but until Tanzania joins and everybody's in. And of course, Burundi just said that they're not even. They're having their own problems. And Rwanda and Kenya were willing and had already signed that. So these are the problems that you're experiencing here in East African community. But a lot of it stems from a level of distrust between the member states. And now look at what is happening there in ECOWAS there, when you see the Ghanaian, traders are not allowing, Nigerians who reside there in Ghana to trade there freely. I think that goes against all the protocol put across by ECOWAS. And so this is something that perhaps they should take to ECOWAS, the leadership there, they should actually, form a case there and take their cries there and see that this is taken care of very, very quickly, because I think it's unfair. And we've not had cases of Ghanaians, or if you've had out there, or viewers, and if you've had anything, just let me know. But from where I stand, I've not had anything, any Ghanaian being blocked from trading from Nigeria. I've not heard such news or anywhere. So in case, but if there is, please let me know. So I think this is unfair, and the government of Ghana should actually look into this very, very quickly, so that if they want to realize a dream of having a very strong West Africa community, people must be allowed to trade freely, and their rights must not be infringed in that. Chooks, you're saying no day in Nigeria you will not record 200 dead in AD by Boko Haram, Fulani herdsmen, or military police. Nigeria is a killing field. We are in trouble here. Nobody is defending you guys. Yeah, you're right. I think in a week I read perhaps 2 deaths, several killings that have been caused by Boko Haram. At least 2 news items about deaths that have been caused by Boko Haram, and not just in Nigeria, also in Mali, also in Niger, also in Chad, and Burkina Faso, and other surrounding countries that they have really people are being killed, and innocent lives being killed, lost through the scourge of Boko Haram. So yes, I know what you're talking about. Thank you so much. And of course, Gabon Parliament, member of Parliament has been sentenced, former member of Parliament has been sentenced to 6 years in jail for his part in post-electoral violence. I keep saying that Gabon is another hot potato here in Africa. This is just a time bomb, just a problem waiting to happen. Remember, the president now, Ali Bongo, has been in power, I think, for 12 years, if I'm not wrong. And his father was the president there for 40 years. So after he died, his son took over. So the Bongo family has led Gabon for 52 years. And I remember earlier in the year, there was an attempted coup where 4 young military men went and at national radio station, and they made an announcement, that the government was now under them and all that. But they ended up being killed. And president at that time was receiving treatment in a different country, in Morocco, I believe. He had suffered a stroke last year in October, but right now he's back in Gabon. So this is a person that cannot even lead freely. This is a person that cannot even, preside over his official presidential duties, because he's sort of incapacitated. The same thing as former president of Algeria, Abdelaziz Bouteflika. He was insisting for running for another term, and yet he had suffered a stroke I think in 2013. He has not been presiding over his official duties. He was not appearing anywhere. He was in and out of the hospital, and he was sick. But even in that state, being in and out of the country seeking for medical treatment and medical attention, Bouteflika was insisting he still wants to run for another re-election. And Algerians came out, and he had already ruled, Algeria for 20 years. And they came out and said, oh no, we've had enough of you, And they took to the streets. They started, early in the year, they started, and they were very relentless. So at some point, Bouteflika went in Switzerland, got treated, I think sometimes in February, came back after 2 weeks, and then he decided, okay, yes, I'll still run. But and then the pressure continued. After a while, he said, fine, I'll run, but for only, I can go halfway the term. I will not complete the term. And Algerians are thinking, come on now. No, we don't want you. 20 years you've led us. What is it that you want to do now that you've not done for 20 years? Enough with you. And, the pressure forced former President Abdel Bouteflika to leave power. And that is the same thing that happened to Omar al-Bashir. And I believe it's just in the offing for now, President, Ali Bongo, if he's not very careful. I think Gabonese people have had it. One family leading the country 52 years since receiving independence. That's a little too much. And so this is somebody who lives in paranoia, the same way as Burundian president here, Pierre Nkurunziza, who does not leave Bujumbura at all because he is afraid of a coup can happen anytime. You know, there was an attempted coup in 2015, especially when he announced that third term, controversial third term, you know, and he changed the constitution and now to run for another term, and he removed the term limits for presidency now, and one term goes for I think 7 years. That's ridiculous. Here in Kenya it's 5, so 10 years. That's the max a president can run for. So these are just some of the challenges that African democracy experience when you have people like this, President Ali Bongo, who is sort of incapacitated. He's not exactly 100% healthy, and after he suffered a stroke last year, like I've said there, but he's still insisting on being the president of Gabon, and so. In 2015, more than 1,000 people were arrested. In 2016, arrested after violence. Protests broke out following his disputed presidential elections in 2016. 3 people were killed in protests that began after the announcement that President Ali Bongo had been narrowly re-elected. So actually, he had, according to the opposition there, he had lost the elections, but he was rigged in for another term. And Gabonese are really tired. 52 years being led by one family. That's ridiculous. I don't know why we even accept such things in Africa. We are not a monarchy unless in a few, but we don't have that. A country like Gabon, they don't have a monarchy, but now this family has installed itself as the supreme leader of Gabon. I think it's just a matter of time. And this is a country that I think is on the watch for easily can be tipped off together with Eritrea. When you hear reports coming from Eritrea, it's not very rosy there. So one of our viewers here was watching us from, I think, Mozambique. And now the Mozambican Catholic bishop has criticized the government over what he said was its failure to curb a radical Islamist insurgency. So that is also a problem that is happening there in a place called, is it a province or just a town, Bemba, and is gas-rich area in the north of Mozambique, where Islamist militant attacks have been growing in the last 2 years. So there you go, one of our viewers there from Mozambique. What else is happening there? Okay, Be Omoto Chan, thank you so much. I think you're saying, Miriam, confirmed, can East African allow South Sudanese to work in Kenya, Uganda, and etc. as South Sudanese? Can I move with my ID as member of East African community? Yes, matter of fact, you can. Unfortunately, stories we've had in South Sudanese have always worked and lived with us here in Kenya. Where I grew up, in the estate I grew up, we had like a section full of South Sudanese, and we mingled, and we didn't even have a problem. We even, unless somebody mentions it to you, we assume they're even Kenyans because a lot of them are born here. Remember, when the war broke from South Sudan, a lot of them came to Kenya. So I don't think that is a problem at all. We even intermarry and all that. South Sudanese are settled here in Kenya. So that is not a problem. But we've been seeing cases of Kenyans being arrested arbitrarily there in South Sudan and being detained and being jailed. Others have, disappear without traces. So that is still a problem. But I think because the structures in South Sudan are not quite, the government is still working on it. And of course, the war just has brought a lot of confusion. So I think a few elements and people who are not of goodwill are really taking advantage of that. And I think doing things that are not right. But in Kenya, you can move and you can work freely here, I believe. Absolutely. And William Aja, you're saying 90% of those traders are Biafrans. These are the reason why Biafrans need their freedom. Tell me, if Nigeria is a country, why would Biafrans be treated like that? But because Nigeria has lost respect worldwide, if Nigerian government had given us our independence, we the Biafrans had a big dream to make our country the best in Africa. Nigerian government has never done nothing about the Ghanaian and Nigerian crisis as Biafrans. Okay, is that why the government? Same thing in South Africa, so we just need our freedom. Oh, all right. So what you're saying is, what I'm hearing you say is, the Nigerians in Ghana, whose business, the traders or entrepreneurs, Nigerian entrepreneurs who are being targeted and whose shops are being closed in Ghana are actually Biafrans. Then that's very sad. Then is that why the president is very quiet? Because I would expect when we see row even happening between us and Uganda, there's like a small island there in Lake Victoria that normally causes a bit of tiff between Kenya and Uganda's side. But we see the presidents actually even addressing it. We've seen Kenyan president addressing it, and even Ugandan president. They reach out and they try to address it because it is a concern, and we want a cohesive, diplomatic neighborliness across the two countries. So this is the third time that the shops of Nigerian traders have been closed in Ghana, and they're being targeted in Ghana. And now you're telling me that actually these Nigerians are Biafrans who are being targeted in Ghana. So would that be the reason why President Buhari has been very quiet and has not seen this as a need, something to be addressed very urgently? Because it will be a concern for any well-meaning president of a country when you hear that your citizens are being mistreated in a certain. You would want to know what is the problem. Even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has not addressed this at all, because. Why? They are Biafrans. That is very sad. That is really, really sad then. So I would advise, because they're part of ECOWAS, perhaps they should take a case. When Rwanda and Uganda had a problem, Rwanda closed the border. They're having their own problems, Rwanda and Uganda. If you watch this show, then we've talked about it so many times. So now one of Ugandan lawyer went to the East Africa Community Court and, said, the row between these two countries is affecting our businesses, is affecting our livelihood, is affecting our free movement, and that goes against the spirit of East African community. So I would advise these entrepreneurs, Biafran entrepreneurs, from to go to. Is there a place where such cases can be arbitrated in ECOWAS? I think if they went there, then they could be heard. If the Nigerian government is doing nothing about it, I think there's a legal way they can go and have it addressed, and maybe the Ghanaian government can offer them protection while they do their work there, because they're not there illegally. According to ECOWAS, they are allowed. And when you read even the information, these people are trading there legally. They have not broken the law. They are legit entrepreneurs there, and they're just trying to eke a living. Because their country, or where they are, is unbearable. As you've said, they're Biafrans. So they're trying to get some fresh air out there and start their lives and have another life and, just do something meaningful with their lives out there. And now they're being targeted there. I think that is quite unfair. And so I think they could take the legal way and see if there are mechanisms within ECOWAS that would arbitrate such matters. And I believe there is. Ali Ahmed is saying that is not right and the AU must intervene. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I believe so as well. They should absolutely, intervene in what is happening there for those traders. And I believe it's quite unfair, because I've not heard any Ghanaians being targeted in other countries. I've not heard that, especially if they've gone there to do businesses, legally. I've not heard that. So I think that's quite unfair, and they should find a way to, have their case heard in ECOWAS. I believe that there has to be a mechanism that they can work that out. If the government is not speaking or intervening on their behalf, they then should do something themselves about it, and maybe even approach the Ghanaian government and see if they could, intervene now on their behalf. It's quite sad and complicated at the same time. But yes, that is that there. And Biafran traders are being targeted there in Ghana, and for the third time now in the year, their shops have been closed in the major capital in Accra, and others, another one in Kumasi. Yes. So now, Zimbabwe's government has announced plans to start offering free treatment to cancer patients, reports. Yes. So Zimbabwe wants to offer free treatment to cancer patients there. Even getting a painkiller in a Zimbabwe pharmacy now is becoming a problem. Just the basic illnesses, Zimbabweans have to cross over to the neighboring countries, South Africa, Zambia, and other neighboring countries for them to even buy this important, basic medication. So now Health Minister Obadiah Moyo is quoted as saying to the radio station ZBC Radio that cancer has actually overtaken HIV and AIDS as the main cause of death in the country. Now, that is really alarming. And we've seen cancer growing even here in Kenya. So many cases of cancer. When you go to social media, people are trying to fundraise for the treatment of cancer, which is extremely expensive, and a lot of poor people get to die unless you can afford the chemotherapy. It's quite expensive. And then because then in the basic medical, perhaps public facilities, these things cannot be detected very early. So by the time somebody realizes, it is in a stage where it's maybe the third or fourth stage, which is quite dangerous, and it's very advanced. So even here, the death of Kenyans by cancer is rapidly increasing, and it's very alarming. So now this statistic by the health minister Obadiah there from Zimbabwe saying that cancer has actually overtaken HIV and AIDS, which was the number one killer in Zimbabwe. Remember, even the late Oliver Mtukudzi had to write a song, about AIDS, because it was killing people in their masses there in Zimbabwe, especially in the 90s. But in the recent past, due to awareness and the free HIV antiretroviral medication, I think the scourge has gone down, and also due to awareness, I think people have become more careful. And so now, that is being overtaken by cancer. It's becoming the number one killer in Zimbabwe. That's very sad. Oh, that's very... I look forward to a day I'll sit here and read some good news coming from Zimbabwe. Every time I read, it's hyperinflation. I think now it's at 175% inflation. It's ridiculous. And now, of course... So the health minister here thinks says that Zimbabwe seeks to give free treatment to cancer patients. Can they afford it? I think it's a very noble idea, but can Zimbabwe as a country afford it? Are they able to do that for their citizens? If they're able to, then that will be kudos to them. But it's having its own problems there in Zimbabwe, and some NGOs have warned that Zimbabwe's health sector was in a precarious state. Zimbabwe used to have the best infrastructure in Africa. Zimbabwe used to have the best hospitals. Zimbabwe used to be the food basket of Africa. When you read stories, Zimbabwe, say 25 years ago, it was one of the flourishing countries in Africa. And now when you look at it, it has become a shell of its previous self. And it's just a sad case. And President Mnangagwa still continues to face these challenges. And as I said there, the opposition leader has refused, to acknowledge that he lost in the last elections. He says his victory was stolen from him, and so yes, it's something also he has to grapple with. And there has been some rumors that there are people who are acting, are being trained. Some Zimbabweans are being trained in some countries to come back and overthrow, the president. So he actually arrested some activists. Was it 2 months, if I'm not wrong, just slightly over 2 months ago, he arrested some 4 activists who he said had received training from outside Zimbabwe in some African country. I can't remember which one, and who are coming to, to train some youth there because they're planning to coup over his government. So those allegations are not really, confirmed, but the government. So this NGO activists were actually given us very long sentences. Now they are in jail there in Zimbabwe. G Best Ohinya, you're saying you're watching from United Arab Emirates. Good afternoon from here. It is a good afternoon to you. 20 minutes to 1 p.m. here in Nairobi. Thank you so much. Okebe, you're saying my 3 boys are born in Kenya, but still a lot of challenges as my wife not allowed to withdraw money with ID without passport. I'm wondering why, because South Sudan not yet recognized as East African members. I think depends. Where does she stay? I think it depends. Doctor is Ugandan, and I don't think he has Kenya's passport. I don't think he even has Dr. David Matanga, and he's able to just go about his businesses here as usual, uses his ID, his passport, whatever, to carry on his daily life here. I think as long as you have the right papers, it's not a problem. I think that could be just I don't know where she's staying here in Kenya, but that shouldn't be a problem. And if your children are born here, then they are Kenyans. Remember, even President Salva Kiir said some of his kids are born here in Kenya, so he wants Kenyan citizenship. Yes, if you're born in this country, automatically you're given the Kenya nationality. You are considered Kenyan. You are Kenyan by birth. All right. So yes, if your kids were born here, then they are Kenyans. Barney Harris is saying you're watching from Liberia. And the president there in Liberia, George Weah, I believe, he has been having his own problems. He's just realizing that, being successful in the football pitch is quite different from running a government. And there's some money that was lost. Is it in Liberia, I believe? Just disappeared from containers. And they're looking for it. And a lot of runaway corruption. And there were protesters there a few weeks ago who came out to say, President George Weah is not leading Liberia in the right way. And he's not offering proper leadership there in Liberia. Barney Harris, what is the latest there from Liberia? Please let me know, and let the rest of our viewers know. You're saying your wife stays in Kiambu. Okay, I think she should just as long as she has the proper papers, I don't think that should be a problem. I believe we have a lot of South Sudanese here in Kenya, I tell you. You know that. Yes, and they just go on about their lives very normally, freely here in Kenya. So yes, so President Mogetesi Matiti is in Kenya, president of Botswana. He's here yesterday, and he says he told President Uhuru Kenyatta that he is endorsing Kenya's bid for a seat at the United Nations Security Council when a position becomes vacant later this year. Visiting Botswana, President Mogetesi Masisi said his country would back Kenya out of trust that Kenya would support it too in other international bids. Remember, President Masisi of Botswana, he visited Kenya yesterday. He's having his own problems. Like, which African head of state does not have his own problems? Our president here, Uhuru Kenyatta, is having constant headache. And, President Masisi has a problem with the former president of Botswana, Ian Khama. You know that, right? And so Ian Khama had picked Masisi to replace him, and people hoped that Masisi will be his lapdog to the former president Ian Khama. So when Masisi came into power, he decided to be his own person. And so the former president is not very pleased with his successor, and they are at constant loggerheads. A matter of fact, Ian Khama even ditched the party, that they shared with now President Masisi, and went to, opposition. He's now supporting opposition figures there. It's been, at loggerheads. So he does not want. He was disappointed that Masisi did not continue to dance to his tune. He was hoping, because he's the one who had handpicked Masisi, Masisi will just fold on him, and probably whatever he wants, Masisi will just make happen. But he was surprised there when Masisi came to power. He decided to become his own man, create his own alliances, and lead Botswana the best way he knew how. And he's not been very happy. And I think that is the same thing that is happening in the DRC. Remember, it was widely said that opposition leader Martin Fayulu won the elections, but in a very interesting announcement, the Electoral Commission in the DRC came out to announce now President Felix Tshisekedi as the winner. And after they were said to have had secret meetings with former President Joseph Kabila, and they agreed on a pact And Kabila thought, okay, fine, I'm helping you get there. But when Tshisekedi became the president, and after his inauguration, he made quite a U-turn. And I think former President Kabila is not very happy because you've seen a lot of opposition figures had fled from the DRC and had gone to other countries because they had fallen out with the president. But immediately after inauguration, now President Tshisekedi started to reach out to the former opposition figures and everybody else because I think he wanted a new start for the DRC. So it is the same case. You know, some presidents they think now, if I give you my support and you're elected, then I expect this from you. I expect a level of loyalty, and we've seen quite some falling out, even in the DRC case, and also now in Botswana. So there it is. So that is just the latest from Africa this morning in a nutshell. And a Rwandan opposition activist Diana Rwigara has spoken to the BBC Newsday program about why she wrote an open letter to her president about the death of a prison guard. You know, democracy does not exist in Rwanda, right? While the country is doing very well, it's flourishing. It's one of the countries that is fronted as doing very well in terms of development and all that, Rwanda. But it is a dictatorship over there. You cannot criticize President Kagame. Matter of fact, you can't even make a cartoon of him, make jokes about the president or government officials. Otherwise, that can attract a 5 years jail term. He has become a dictator. And I think people argue, but it's working. You know, Rwanda is very safe. There's food, there's what. But democracy is very important. I think maybe because I come from a democratic country, Kenya here, it's not perfect, but you know, I can speak my mind. I can sit here and criticize the government and not worry about me leaving the studio and some police officers will be waiting for me at the doorstep. I don't fear that because Kenya is a free, democratic country and people fought for it, for us to have this space that we enjoy today. So when I hear cases like this from Rwanda, you're murdered. So one of the Rwandese opposition figures, she was also incarcerated towards the elections. And I hear if you want to run for elections in Rwanda, you have to take your papers to the president. He has to agree whether you're going to oppose him or not. And if he decides, no, you don't qualify, then that's it. And not even the Electoral Commission. The president. That is ridiculous. That is really, that is ridiculous. So there's a lot of things are happening, but it's because Rwandans are very hush-hush. You know, you can't speak freely. So this person, Ms. Rwigara, who is now an opposition activist there, published the letter to President Paul Kagame last week about the murder of Paul Mwiseneza. In the letter, she said he was killed shortly after talking to her about an unrest at a prison in the capital, Kigali. So there was an unrest in the prison, and when this opposition activist Diana Rwigara spoke with this prison guard, the next thing you hear, he was murdered. And people who also defected from Rwanda's government, who are his close allies, others you hear they're being killed especially in South Africa, because a lot of them ran there. And another one was murdered here in Kenya in broad daylight and across Africa. So it's things, it's not very right there in Rwanda. Yeah. Wilson Jinchigo, you're saying you're watching from Italy. You really love our work. Good work. Keep it up. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for your support. Owele, you're saying, keep it up. My dear, we're watching and we noted your idea. Yes, indeed. What idea was that? I think I've overspoken today. Nearly 2 hours. So we are in the next 10 minutes. Remember, as we started the show today, the latest from what is happening from Cameroon, the ones who were, 4 people were killed from Sunday's protest that happened in a prison in Cameroon. And also here, United States, it wants to impose some restrictions for some Nigerians. And when I was speaking about Ghana and, the Nigerians being targeted in Ghana, the traders being targeted in Ghana and their shops being closed, I'm now shocked to learn that these are Biafrans who have ran from the persecution from Nigeria, going to this country in Ghana, which is allowed under ECOWAS, and they're starting their businesses. So you are a target in your own country. You go to another country, you're still a target. And your president cannot even speak on your behalf. That is very sad. If you're referring to that, that is very sad. And as I have said, I don't know if that is the idea you're referring to. Let the leadership of the traders, I believe they do have let me see that they do have that. The president of the Nigerian traders, their union, the union leaders, they should take their case to ECOWAS. There are mechanisms that have been put in place to take care of such matters, I believe, because or better still, they can approach the Ghanaian government. I believe that could be a very easy and quick solution. If not, let them go to the ECOWAS leadership there. Let the traders union go to ECOWAS, and I believe that they will be heard and their problem will be solved, and they'll get protection, especially from the Ghanaian government. So that is just about it. We started early with what is happening in Kenya today and who will be the next finance minister. I think a reshuffle is overdue, and now President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think, has an opportunity to bring us people who are ready to work and who are ready to expedite on his Big Four agenda, because what we have right now, half of the cabinet secretaries are really not working for Kenyans. They're involved in mega scandals. The ministries are just, I don't know, it's just a lot of wastage and misplacement and misuse of public funds that is happening, and now they are being mentioned. Remember, the Kenyan CS for Treasury here, Henry Rotich, this is according to the Star, had to step down yesterday after he was arrested on Monday, after he was arrested due to the dam scandal. We've talked about this dam scandal here so much. I'm sure you are familiar with it. And now the president has another headache to pick another CS, and I think this headache should extend to replacing a lot of these other CS that are really letting him down in terms of making sure he realizes his dream. And now he has a very few months left, I believe 36 months before the end of his presidency, and President Kenyatta is really working hard to make sure that the agenda he had for Kenyans is really, he's able to realize that. Remember, he had 4 big agendas, and that is to introduce an affordable healthcare for Kenyans, to have affordable housing, to improve in the manufacturing industry, and as well as, I'm forgetting this other one, food security. And all these things, the cabinet secretaries that have been put in these very important places, they're really letting down the president. When you see the Ministry of Agriculture, they're now refusing to take maize from the Kenyan farmers. They have already taken some money illegally from the coffers of the Ministry of Agriculture, imported illegally maize into the country, while the Kenyan farmers are suffering and the maize have not even been bought. It does not make sense. This is one of the CSs that needs to be struck out quickly. While the president is looking to replace the CS for Treasury, he should seek to replace also the CS for Agriculture without even delay, because I think a CS, Mwangi Kiunjuri, who is the CS for Agriculture, has also let him down very, very badly. And these are just some of the things that the headache that President Uhuru Kenyatta has to deal with, and headaches across Africa that African leaders have to deal with. So it has been a great show. I want to thank you so much, all our viewers, for your company. I want to thank you for writing in and for engagement this afternoon and morning earlier there. And so hopefully we can meet here for another edition of Good Morning Africa tomorrow. But for now, I want to thank you so much. And yes, hopefully we can see each other here tomorrow. But for now, my name is Miriam Magoto, and it is bye-bye.
I want to call upon the people of Abazonia today, wherever you are in the diaspora in Abazonia itself, that in a struggle you are bound to have divisions. But divisions should not divert you from the main focus, the main challenge. We have struggled to expose the happenings, the human rights abuses in Amazonia. The army has killed hundreds and hundreds of thousands, burnt houses of people, internet was cut off, schools were closed, dispensaries, hospitals were burnt down. Amazonians should not be intimidated by Paul Robia. It is not upon the leaders of Amazonia, because I am not from Amazonia, but I've played a pivotal role in making sure that I loud out the voices, I put out the call, I call upon AU, EU, United Nations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International. Many of them have listened to some of the things that I say here, and they have come at last. America, United States of America, is slowly moving towards giving the Amazonian people the dignity they deserve. I therefore call upon the leaders and the leadership of the Amazonian people to unite for a purpose. The unity of purpose is paramount, as opposed to disunity, which has nothing but only produces ego that we have seen in South Sudan. What has killed South Sudan is not because they don't have the money, the minerals, the resources, is ego between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. We would not like to see that ego come to the people of Amazonia, the leadership of Amazonia. I call upon Samuel Sako, Akanga, Milan, and Eko to unite and talk with one voice on international scene that will bring about the peace, the tranquility that you yearn for since 1961, when the resolution 1608 was abandoned by the United Nations General Assembly and Amazonia was annexed by the Cameroon government by then. I call upon you, my brothers, to pick up the unity call and free your people without disintegration. Thank you.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.